All personnel, please move to your stations. Prepare for final systems checkdown.
Pulse is slightly elevated.
Respiration, check. Stand by for move to stage 1.
Senator Kirby. Now, nice to see you, sir. How are you? Colonel?
Lieutenant.
Steve, this isn't Mussolini's Italy. You are free to change your mind whenever you...
Save it. Okay, Doctor.
Because of you, I have the chance to make a wrong thing right. I thank you for that.
Commencing stage 1.
So this process can take a frail boy with polio, give him the strength and speed of a world-class athlete. Think what kind of army we'll have.
Let's just make sure our boy comes out of this safe and sound before we go counting our chickens.
Where'd you get your guinea pig?
Happens to be the best damn candidate out of 600 volunteers.
It's gonna be a national hero.
Stand by for move to
Not
stage
exactly.
2.
His name's a secret. Only Dr. Vaselli and myself know who he really is. We kept it that way to protect his family. For the rest of the world, he's just codenamed Captain America. He may not be Superman, but he'll be a living symbol of what this country stands for.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and today I'm welcoming a new guest, and that is Geoffrey Golden. How you doing today, Jeff?
Oh, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a little bit early here, but I'm doing good.
It's a little early. Where are you?
I'm in Japan. So it's 7 a.m. here.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's rad. Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles, so it's 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Is it 7 a.m. in the future?
Yes. Yeah, it's Saturday morning here.
Can you give me the lotto numbers?
No,
numbers.
I can't help you out with that. I'm sorry.
Ah.
If I had those types of powers, I would not be living in the place I'm living in. I'd be living in someplace a lot nicer. I'd be living like Maui or something like that.
That's fair. I've always wanted to visit Japan. I have you been to the Super Mario theme park? Have you been to Super Nintendo World?
No, we haven't been yet, but we do want to go. Right. My daughter's only about 18 months or so now, and my son's coming soon. So once they get older, then we're hoping to take them out there.
That's cool. Yeah, I've been dreaming about a Nintendo theme park since I was a little kid, and so I'm very excited. So supposedly we're getting it in LA early next year.
Oh, really?
I'm
okay.
very excited about that. But I think yours is the Japanese one is going to have more bells and whistles. I think you're going to have a whole Donkey Kong edition. So listen,
yeah.
I'll take what I can get. Nintendo theme park wise.
Yeah. Well, my wife's the one who first told me about it. So both of us definitely want to go there once we finally have a chance, and once our kids are old enough to, not give us heart attacks when they're walking around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just suddenly they're like run after Luigi and you're like, where did they go? God, where did they go?
Yeah. Okay. So first thing I'd like to do is, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, let's see. I'm Geoffrey. I am a narrative designer and a game creator based in LA. I've written for Capcom, Ubisoft, Square Enix, Disney, and indie studios around the world. I am the game master for Adventure Snack, which is an interactive fiction email newsletter. So if you like playing like Choose Your Adventure books as a kid, or you enjoy playing like text adventure games like Zork or what have you, this is that, but through email. I turn your inbox into an adventure. Twice a month, sending out new and funny and weird mini text adventure games you can play on your lunch break in your inbox, and that's at adventuresnack.com.
Okay.
So I love games. I love writing. And I enjoy bad movies. I really love a good bad movie. So this was fun what we ended up watching today.
Yeah, fun's not exactly the word I'd use for it, but we'll get there. So I want to talk a little bit about you, because you said you're a game writer. What was probably the biggest game you've worked on writing wise?
That's tough. I guess it would be the first one that comes to mind is a game called Fallen Legion Revenants, which I worked on for two and a half years. It's an action RPG on Switch and PlayStation. I think it's like 20 hours of content or something like that. All said and done. Yeah, it takes place in a grim steampunk world beset by a plague, by a horrible plague. Nothing we could relate to, right? Nothing relevant. Actually, he wrote it. We started writing it well before we even knew what COVID was or what it would be. It was written with the what they call the Spanish flu, though it wasn't a Spanish flu in mind. And then it just happened during production, towards the end of production, it started, and we ended up as just like, wow, okay, all these things that we wrote about ended up coming to pass.
So it's your fault, basically.
Yeah, I guess I willed it into being. Sorry about that. Sorry, folks. But yeah, so that was a pretty intense project. I think it ended up being, I want to say, like 3 feature-length screenplays worth of writing, something like that. When it was all said and done, it was quite a bit of work.
Okay, wow. I've never heard of that game. I'll have to look that up. That's and I've seen like game scripts before, and just knowing about how much story is in a lot of these games, I can't even. And me, I'm a writer myself, but I'm a novelist,
Awesome.
so I do it all by myself, basically. And or when I do comic books, right? Sometimes you have a little bit of input from the artist, but I can't even fathom like all the work that must go into all the different, decision trees and all that has to go into game writing.
This is true. I mean, for Fallen Legion Revenants, depending on who you befriend in the castle or who you betray, that opens up a whole other story paths, whole other branching paths, and there's lots of different ways and configurations of things that can happen in the story. But not every game is like that. I mean, sometimes I work on games with very simple stories. I did a game for Disney recently called Disney Wonderful Worlds, where I wrote the Toy Story adventures, and there it was pretty straightforward. There was no branching paths. They needed somebody to write the Toy Story characters in voice, and I was happy to do it. I'm a Disney fan, so I was very happy to do it. So it really runs the gamut, as a game writer. Sometimes you'll be writing something for years and years with a lot of intense branching, and sometimes you might work for something on a couple of weeks or maybe a month,
right?
A really simple project. So yeah, it really it really runs the gamut. And I've written novels and comics as well. And I will say that game writing it's a whole other beast. It's wild.
Yeah. So this is the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. So do you have any experience with superheroes, either in movies or comics?
Experience
as a fan.
As a fan, yeah. Oh, sure. I love superheroes. I was an avid reader of X-Men comics growing up. X-Men was my jam. X-Men and the Tick. I liked X-Men because it was it's for the same reason a lot of people like it, because it was about outsiders. And in high school, you feel it's like, yeah, I'm real edgy. Nobody understands me. I'm just like Wolverine. I'm exactly like Wolverine. But I also love those characters and just the big personalities bouncing off each other. They didn't feel inaccessible. They felt very human and relatable. And then I love parody. I love I love satire, and the Tick I was big into the Tick and those NEC comics. So I read a lot of them. The Chainsaw Vigilante, the Man-Eating Cow. Ben Edlund's work is just really funny. I really love it. So yeah, I read some serious superheroes, some funny superheroes, and yeah, I read superhero comics to this day. not like I don't keep up regularly with what's going on. I think the last run that I read through was the latest version of the X-Men comics, the one where they go to Krakoa.
Oh yeah, the Hickman stuff. Yeah,
the Hickman stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the first like arc of the Hickman stuff. I thought it was very good.
Yeah.
I'm not reading every week, but I check in, and I enjoy checking in. And then I watch the movies like all of America. I recently saw Doctor Strange 2 and the Batman. So I'm pretty well caught up. We're going to probably start watching the new Ms. Marvel show tonight. Oh, really good. I have a superhero recommendation that maybe flew under your radar or some of your listeners' radar. It's really good. The Squirrel Girl podcast. There's a Squirrel Girl podcast. It's like an audio fiction series where she hosts a radio station on college radio with her friends. And it's very funny. It's written by the comic writer Ryan North, who's a very, very talented writer. It's really funny. It features some celebrity guests. Paul Scheer plays Spider-Man in this universe. It's really clever and really well done. So I'd highly recommend that, folks.
Yeah, cool. I never even heard of that. I'm a lot of the same things that you're into too. I also started off with X-Men, and I keep up mostly with the trade paperbacks when they come on sale. So I'm definitely not up week to week anymore. Can't afford it. But so I'm curious, as an X-Men fan myself, what era of the X-Men did you start reading in? Was it like the 90s? Was it the 80s?
Yeah, definitely would have been the early 90s. Maybe I probably read back issues of the late 80s stuff. It was I think it was my time was defined largely by Claremont, Chris Claremont's work.
Right.
I read pretty much the last thing that I read hardcore. The last books I remember reading like hardcore from when I was a kid, when I was a teen, was The Age of Apocalypse.
Right.
And Generation X were like the two. The Age of Apocalypse was definitely like the culmination. Although did Marvel versus DC happen after that?
They happened very
similar.
very close. Very similar timing.
And that was another one that that was another big event that the Marvel versus DC was big. And then I think by the time Onslaught happened, I was sort of checking out the monster that turns out to be Charles Xavier. I think that was where I stopped reading for a while. And then I've come in periodically. I've read I really loved of Grant Morrison's run. I read that. That was excellent. And
I do another podcast where we talk all about the Morrison run, actually.
Oh, amazing. Oh, great. Yeah, there's so much to it. It's just wow. He really he's like a singular voice. I mean, it's really a pleasure reading his stuff because there's really nothing quite like it. I've read a lot of his books, like The Filth. I've read We Three. A lot of his like weird indie books or offshoot books and his stuff is great. He's so imaginative.
You should also check out, he wrote a book, Super Gods, a few years ago. If you haven't read that, it's not a comic book, it's but it's like a nonfiction book about the superhero genre. It's really good, and it really kind of shows like how much they love superheroes.
That's awesome.
But today we're talking about the 1990 Captain America movie. So, if anybody thinks that it was that Chris Evans was the first, he was not actually. And in fact, even Matt Salinger wasn't the first. The first Captain America were made for TV movies in the 70s. There were two of them, I believe. But then Matt Salinger, who's the son of JD Salinger, the author, actually.
Yes. Which is incredible.
That
in and of itself is kind of a fascinating thing of like, what was that relationship like? Can you imagine being JD Salinger's son? How horrible. it must be. I mean, like, I don't know. Maybe he was a loving dad. His public persona makes me think it would be he'd be absolutely insufferable as a father. But then again, we don't know what people are like behind closed doors. So.
Well, there's some. I actually did a little bit of research because I was just curious about it, and he apparently had a really good relationship with his father. But his sister apparently was a little bit more challenging, or I don't know the whole details, but she wrote a book about her father, and Matt Salinger like slammed the book and said it was like she's like over dramatizing things and stuff like that. So I don't know all the details, but apparently there's a little bit of disagreement among the kids over what kind of a father he was.
Interesting. All right, fair enough.
But yeah, so this movie it had a long production history apparently. Like they had originally planned, Universal had originally gotten the rights, and they had planned it to do a full-length theatrical film with Jeff Bridges as Captain America and Peter Fonda as the Red Skull.
Oh wow.
There's also some concept art of Falcon, Baron Zemo, and Bucky. But obviously it never got made. And that would had to have been like in the early they don't have a date here, but it says here that after that, in 1984, is when the Cannon Group got a hold on their picture on the rights.
Right. The Cannon Group is an incredible. That have you seen that documentary? That's definitely worth watching.
No, but I've heard of it. Yeah, I have to take a look at that.
It's great. I mean, what a bonkers studio Cannon was. I mean, this guy was just like throwing money at anything, and everything. And like, good for him. Like, I mean, he didn't have good taste, but boy, did he have a lot of money to make movies. And boy, did he ever. And so that documentary is definitely it's a wild story. It's one of those like wild business rides, like the Chuck E. Cheese story is another one like that, where it's just like when they got money, they just like spent it fast. They just spent it fast. I'm making the motion that people make at strip clubs where they're
making it rain.
They're making it rain. I'm doing that right now on this podcast, just illustrating how much money they had. So yeah, it makes sense that they had Captain America money in the early 80s.
Yeah. So speaking of that, they had 1986. They had a script that involved a stolen statue of an old Red Skull stealing the Statue of Liberty, and which I don't even know. Good thing they threw that script out.
I think it could have been. Listen, okay. Well, like, if you're trying to make a good movie, don't make it about stealing the Statue of Liberty. But if you're trying to make an even funnier, cheesy blockbuster, then by all means, stealing the Statue of Liberty is like among the funnier things you could do. I wonder how many characters have stolen or hijacked the Statue of Liberty. Like, I know the Ghostbusters did it in Ghostbusters 2.
Right.
And it was a frequent target of Carmen Sandiego. I'm trying to think of other characters that have stolen the Statue of Liberty. I feel like there was one where there was like an evil magician who like made the Statue of Liberty disappear.
I've got some memory of that as well, but I'm not exactly sure what it was.
Yeah, like he put the thing over like the like a big blanket like over the Statue of Liberty and then lifted it and then it was like gone. But I don't know what that is. So if you're listening, if you're out there, listeners, please write in and tell us what it is we're thinking of if you can remember. So they threw out a draft where Red Skull steals the Statue of Liberty. That's too bad for us.
Yeah, and eventually the writer Michael Winner, who had worked on the Death Wish movies, he actually worked with Stan Lee on it, and surprisingly, I'm not sure if this is the same Lawrence Block, the novelist. If it is, I mean, Jesus Christ. But I mean, that was a surprise when I saw that name pop up in the credits, because he's a really good novelist. So, but
we all have our bad days.
Yeah, and then eventually, but I think they just did the story, and then John Stockwell did some work on the script, and Stephen Tolkien did as well. And no, John Stockwell was originally supposed to be the director, but then Albert Pyun was brought in to replace him. And there are a bunch of people who were up for this. Like Val Kilmer was up for this role, but he did the Doors instead, which was definitely a good career move. Dolph Lundgren and Schwarzenegger were up for the role. Schwarzenegger's accent cost him that role. Even who made it in the film, right? Ronnie Cox from RoboCop 2, he's in this too, which was, and he I was surprised when I looking at him in this movie, and it turns out that he said that the original script was actually really good. And he's like, I don't know how they took, he said it was like one of the best, it's like the best script he had ever read in his career. And he said, I don't know how they went from that script to this piece of shit.
That's remarkable. I mean, it's interesting because like you can tell Stan Lee was involved, because there's a lot of like early Marvel stuff like bears little to no, like when the adaptations come around, like they bear like little to no resemblance to the comic story.
Right.
Like it's oftentimes it's you know, hey, it's the Human Torch and his robot friend. You know, it's like, oh, okay, right, they just did whatever.
Right.
But in this case, the beats of the film do match like what we commonly think of as the Captain America mythology. Like that, those beats, at least in the initial like first half of the film, like, yeah, tell you the origin story of Captain America more or less. If things definitely get off the rails at a certain point, and even within the points in which they are following the story, there's moves that they make that are like completely ridiculous. But like you can like it bears the resemblance of a Captain America story.
Yeah.
So I could see where there might have been a better draft at some point that hemmed even more closely to the comics. Maybe budget cuts or recastings or things forced them to make changes to the script. I mean, the movie, according to Wikipedia, the movie only had a $3 million budget, and it does show. It shows. Yeah, absolutely. So it may have been that the original draft was meant for a bigger studio, you know, because it didn't end up at Canon, right? Didn't it end up, Canon bought it, but then it ended up at like a Canon spin-off studio, right? Or something like that.
I'm taking a look here.
It was filmed in Yugoslavia, which is also great.
I'm not sure actually. It doesn't say that here in this Wikipedia thing. But yeah, it's listed as an American Yugoslavian film.
Yeah. Good sign. Very good sign right there.
But yeah, and it was originally made in like, it was shelved for 2 years apparently. So I think even the studio knew that they didn't really want to release this, and it was originally the director had wanted to make the costume look a little bit more realistic. Like he had suggested, the director had actually originally talked to Marvel Comics about using the black costume from that Steve Rogers was wearing in the 1980s as the Captain, which later became U.S. Agent's costume. Marvel said no to that, and then the director asked if they could make the suit more tactical with like a pouch belt and with like quarter mail armor. And again, Marvel said no, it had to be the classic red, white, and blue leather look is what they demanded.
Wow.
And it was actually made by the same costume shop that made the Batman suits in Batman and Batman Returns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's we all have our bad days.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing looks like garbage.
It does.
I mean, with no uncertain terms. I mean, it looks like something you'd buy at a Halloween store. It doesn't look good. I mean, especially in close up. Like you look at that mask, it has like a really thin quality to it. It doesn't. It's interesting because they definitely abandoned the costume for a good chunk of the film.
Yeah.
like for so long that I was like, I wonder if he's gonna wear the costume again. Yeah, but like, you can see why. It looks like it's like a TV movie costume, maybe at best.
It was also incredibly hot, apparently. Like Matt Salinger was like dripping with sweat when he got out of that thing. So,
yeah,
but also too, it
leather.
just looks like it's not even fitted for him. Like when you look at those close-ups of his face, it doesn't match the contours of his face at all.
Yeah, wrinkles on his face.
Yeah, and it's also they had tried originally to have it without the ears and to have them just ear holes and have his own ears come out, but apparently it didn't work. So I don't know why you would put on fake ears then instead of just covering them up completely. Like that was just such a weird choice.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I'm looking at it now and just reminding myself, yeah, that is weird because they look like wrinkly. It looks like he's got like his ears have been like beaten up or something like that. And he's taken like one too many shield shots to the ear. It's a little weird. A little weird.
They also bizarrely make the Red Skull Italian in this instead of German. I thought that was a really strange choice.
Yeah, all Italy stuff. I guess they were like, let's be hip and cool. When everybody does fascism, they do German fascism. But the Italians were fascists too. Like, let's do some Italy. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the thinking was there. Maybe
I don't know. At first, I thought maybe it had to do with the actor they cast, but then I just looked it up now, and he's born in Ohio, so it's not because of the actor.
No, and also the accent is all over the place. I mean, it is supposed to be Italian, and sometimes it's recognizable as Italian. Most of the time, I would say it's just like vaguely European. It's just like some kind of nonsense Europe country. I mean, a lot of times that's what they do. They'll just say it's evil Stan, or whatever. But it's like, okay, but no, they very specifically grounded it in Italy. But yeah, he did not sound Italian 100% of the time for sure.
I also couldn't understand the logic of the story where we have to find the Red Skull's real name to stop him. I could not figure out why they thought that would stop him. I mean, the guy's he's been a fascist supervillain now for decades. He's killed like JFK and Martin Luther King. I don't think hearing his mother's voice is really going to change his mind at this point.
No, yeah, that was a weird Martha sort of a moment. It what a strange kryptonite. I mean, I guess it took him back to the time when he was forced from his home, and that was traumatizing hearing that audio, but like so traumatizing that you wouldn't like be. I don't know. So I'm a wrestling fan, and there's this thing in wrestling, the distraction roll up. Which sometimes gets abused as a technique, but basically it ends. If you want to try to preserve your face, the strength of your face, what you do is you have a distracting person come out during the match, and the face is so distracted that the villain the heel gets a quick roll up, and thus is able to win the match. But it's like in real life, that would never happen. No one would ever be so distracted that they couldn't like completely just care. It's just like think, it just completely debilitates you. I mean, that's what happens to the Red Skull. It's exactly
what happens.
Debilitated by this audio. And they didn't even lamppost it either. Like signpost it rather. Like they could have had a thing where it was like his daughter or whatever like brings in a family album at one point, and it's like, Father, I thought we could look at this for a minute. And he was like, I never want to see that. Never show me my past. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, okay, it's his thing,
right?
Like we could have done that, but they didn't. Yeah.
It's just it came out of nowhere when I'm sitting here and I'm watching the movie, because I had actually seen this twice before watching it this time.
Oh wow!
When-
If so, you had asked me what movie I wanted to watch. If I had known that you had seen it twice before, I wouldn't have suggested it because that is a lot to present. I've never seen this before. I love bad movies, as I said. And so I'll go out of my way to watch like a really good bad movie. So I hadn't seen this before, so for me this was fun. But you had seen it twice before.
I'd seen it twice before, yeah. Well, the first time I actually saw it was when I was a kid, because it was actually on. My library actually had a VHS copy for rent when I was a kid. And
amazing.
So I remember seeing it. I'm like, wow, they made a Captain America movie. Wow, I'm gonna have to watch this. And I'm watching it. I'm like, even as a kid, I'm just like, I don't think that's how movies are supposed to be done. And then later on, as looks like I lost my camera here. But when I was older, when I was in high school, a buddy of mine had actually managed to get me a copy of it, and when he gave me a copy of it, I watched it with some friends of mine, and that was just kind of like watching it and making fun of it type of thing, basically.
Right.
But so this is the first time I'm sitting there and I'm watching it with like an analytical eye and trying to give it the whatever benefit of the doubt it has, and so on the show, one of the things I try to do is I try to focus on the positive aspects of these movies.
Okay.
Even movies that are generally bad, we try to find some good things to say about it. But every now and then you get a movie where there's just not a lot of good to say about it. And this is one of those movies.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm trying to think now that challenge accepted. What are some things that I like about this film? Well, as I said earlier, I mean, I like that it tries to tell the origin story from the comics. That he's a superhero in the Nazi era. That he, through no fault of his own, he gets frozen and reawakens in a modern era. I mean, I'll take that to like, hey, we're making Captain America like fucking gritty. Like his family died in a warehouse and he couldn't save them and they burned alive in front of his face. And now he's an American man for revenge, yeah, I mean, it's the 80s. It's a canon related. By the way, this is according to Wikipedia, the rights were sold to the Canon Group, but then one of the founders of the Canon Group left in '89, and this was part of his severance package was the rights to Captain America, which he took with him to another studio, 21st century film. So that's why it's not a canon film. Exactly. It's like a hand-me-down canon. Right. So yeah, that's what I would say is maybe the best thing. I mean, there's no real good performances in the movie. Everybody is kind of bad.
I mean, even the seasoned guys like Ronnie Cox and Ned Beatty, they're not really doing much in this movie.
No, they're like some of those characters are meant to be like important, like the president and his childhood best friend, the journalist, we spend a lot of time with them. We're supposed to care about them. I didn't really care about either of them. The love interest, maybe and the really bad one, well, the original love interest is kind of terrible. Like when she becomes an old lady, like it's very not believable. Also, weirdly, in that scene, did you find it weird that like she was the only one who died, and like the other two guys in the scene, the husband and the journalist, were like kind of more like violently roughed up on screen, but they both survived. She was just like pushed to the ground and like she dies. Yeah. Like, I found that to be very strange. I found that to be very strange.
Yeah, that was a definite example of fridging, right there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
the costumes weren't particularly good.
No, even the red, like my memory of watching this as a kid was that I thought the Red Skull makeup when I was a kid looked pretty good, but looking at back now, I'm like, no, it's not. It's just all bad.
Yeah, I mean, you could see the paint on his eyes underneath the mask, you know. But then they do a weird thing where they like make him look like weirdly human, like they like make up his face again so that it's like face isn't bright red anymore.
Yeah,
which was a weird choice. It's like that's like the one iconic thing about the character. Like you probably want to keep him his face red.
Yeah, apparently they had said that nobody wanted to, that they felt that the audience wouldn't want to look at that skull face for the entire movie, so that's why they did that. Which is just like, I'm like, I don't even understand how you have that logic. I mean, is it just because it's so bad you have that logic? But
because it's not like the version that they ended up with was good. In fact, it's just kind of confusing because it's like, why did this happen? Like, I don't know that they explain it. I don't think they're like, oh, my skin condition cleared up.
No, it's when
my
I was a kid,
the condition cleared up. I'm the Red Skull. I'm a killer, you Captain America. Oh, I hate you so much. It doesn't sound like that. That's the prop. Like, it doesn't sound distinctly Italian, folks. It doesn't sound. You listen to it, and it's just weird.
What he just did is not that much different from the performance in the movie.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm doing is like comical, but it's like clearly Italian,
right?
And what he does is like this like muddied, weird accent that is like vaguely Italian at best. I'll tell you the scene that I love in the film, and it's not because it's good, it's because it's hilarious. I love that, and spoiler for a bad movie, I love when Captain America, strapped to the rocket that is headed for the White House, that is headed straight for the White House, kicks the rocket a couple times, and that force of those kicks are enough to change the trajectory of the rocket so much that it goes to Alaska.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, watching it, I was just like, I wanted to give it a standing ovation. I just love the logic of that. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. I mean, it's like the Red Skull basically invented, ICBMs, even ICBMs that I don't think currently can reach that far.
Right.
Because that range is unbelievable. It's just,
that would go from Italy to Washington, D.C. Wow.
And then it wasn't like it was high up in the air in Washington, D.C. It was like right above the ground, and he kicks it. and also, but the thing I love about that scene is, he sees the kid there, and then later on when he finds the president, and he's like, "You were the little boy." And I'm like, how the fuck would you remember that? Yeah,
you were strapped to a rocket on your way in a collision course with the White House. You probably wouldn't remember the specific bystanders.
I mean, you probably were going so fast you wouldn't have been able to make him out at all. So that's just, I don't even know. Yeah, it was so ridiculous. God, it's just, I thought it was funny too that because they obviously had no budget and they didn't want to cast a different actor to be scrawny Steve Rogers.
Yeah.
So what they did instead is they just say that he's got polio and that he's got a bad leg. So then, like, the scene when he's running with his bad leg and stuff like that, I'm just like, oh, God, this is so bad.
Yeah, it looks really bad. It also, it doesn't. This was one of the things about it, like, the initial scenes where I was like wondering, like, was there a reason that they picked? Did they say that there was like a particular reason for choosing him?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, that was weird to me. That it wasn't like I would have expected him, like, rather than opening in like the house, maybe it opens in like maybe it opens in like the barracks, right? And it's like, he is being like discharged from the army with polio, but he was like the greatest soldier. He was like a really great soldier. Like, he was a really promising soldier. and he has to be discharged. There's nothing he can do. He can't serve his country. It's except then they're like, actually, wait a minute, you're such a good soldier. Maybe you would be the prime candidate for this thing. Like some kind of logic to be like, why is it this? Look, why him? We don't get any explanation for why him. It's just sort of, he just says like, well, I got to do this. Goodbye.
Well, also, I mean, it does this weird thing where it and I think the MCU Captain America films were smart, where they'd said, you know, we're gonna split this. We're gonna have the first movie is all gonna be in World War II, and then it's gonna end with him getting frozen, and then the second movie, that's we're gonna have him in the modern day, which is such a better move, because you see here those two stories are just crammed in together and they don't fit together well, because we get that because he doesn't even have any training. Like the scientist is killed, and then next thing we know, he's on a plane and they gave him a costume and the shield, and they're like, okay, you're gonna go stop the Red Skull now. It's just like the guy hasn't gone through like a single day of training, and now he's got to go and be a superhero. It's just like, well, we got a costume, we got a shield, you got superpowers now, so I guess you can do it. Yeah,
I mean, also like the superpowers are kind of vaguely defined in this film. It's like, well, I wish I had more. He says like, I wish I'd had more training with that shield, but he's like uses it perfectly, so I guess he didn't need more training. But yeah, like he is super strong at times, but like at other times it feels like he's getting his ass kicked in a way that like you wouldn't expect somebody with super strength to be getting their ass kicked. Also, I thought it was really funny where Red Skull sends his daughter with a handgun to like kill Captain America. And it's like, you got this daughter who we haven't described as having any particular skills. Surely you have this. And she's like, yeah, leave it to me. I'll kill this superhero with a regular gun. Shouldn't be any problem.
The superhero with a bulletproof shield and a bulletproof costume.
Yeah,
I'll kill him with my handgun.
I'll kill him with my handgun. Shouldn't be a problem for me. Somebody who has fighting experience, who is an assassin, maybe. They don't say. It's fascinating.
I will say though, and one thing you mentioned earlier, like it was good that they stuck pretty closely to the origin story, because if you look, if you compare it to example for the Red Brown films, in those ones it was just like he was Captain America's son, he was a former Marine, and his father was a government agent in the 40s, and then he had gotten the nickname Captain America. But
yeah, like that kind of thing.
And he gets the flag formula, it's called, and then which was developed from his father's glands or something like that, which is weird. It saves his life, and then he drives around in this high-tech motorcycle, and he's using this plastic see-through shield. But yeah, that was and so I'm glad they didn't go that route, and they actually did stick pretty closely to the classic origin, because it's such a basic origin. I mean, you don't need to screw with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, if you're adapting it, like if you're buying this thing to adapt it, like take what's good, take what works. And like the origin story of Captain America works. Yeah. And so, yeah, I was glad that some of the DNA, it did feel like an extension of the comics to some extent. But can we talk about Captain America's greatest power in this film?
Just one second. I want to mention too one change they made to the origin, which actually has been a good change, and it's something that the Marvel movies also added in. It's that the Red Skull was the first recipient of the super soldier serum, and so then this is like the scientist is like trying to make amends for that. I think that's a good thing too, tying the origin story, tying the Red Skull into the origin, because in the comics the Red Skull was just a guy in a mask for decades, and then it was only after he died and then he got resurrected in a cloned body of Steve Rogers. So now he's got the powers, but for the longest time, he was just a guy in a mask. So I think that was a good change they made.
Yeah, that is good. That ties them together too. It's like there's
right.
Captain America has a sense of obligation to fighting him because he knows what those powers can do.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
All right. So now you want to talk about Cap's greatest power in this movie?
I want to talk about his greatest power.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't say that it's his super strength. And I wouldn't even say that it is his shield, his remarkable shield. I would absolutely say his greatest super ability is stealing cars.
I knew you were going to say that. I fucking knew it. I'm just waiting. He's going to say it.
Cars.
He's going to say it. He's going to say it. Yeah.
He does it twice. It's his go-to move. Captain America's go-to move in this movie is getting somebody's trust and then just being like, oh, I need to step out of the car for a second. Like I need to smoke or
I'm feeling sick. Yeah.
I'm feeling car sick or something. And then they get out of the car and then Captain America jauntily sneaks into the front seat of the car and steals it. He does it twice to two different heroes in the film, to two of our good guy protagonists. He steals cars
Captain Carjacker, yeah.
He is Captain Carjacker, or Carjack America.
You know what the bizarre thing? This movie had two influences on the MCU. One is the Red Skull origin. The other is the carjacking thing. Because if you watch the MCU films, in every single one, he steals a car.
Does he really? I did not notice it.
Because you think about it, in the first one, you can make an argument that technically he doesn't, but and it's just one brief scene, but it's at the end when the Colonel and Patty come and pick him up Peggy come and pick him up in the car when the plane's going over, and that's the Red Skull's car. So technically that's a stolen car.
Oh, okay, got it.
So that one's kind of a reach. But in the Winter Soldier, him and Black Widow, they steal the car that they take to New Jersey, and then in Civil War, they steal a car after they leave the prison and before when they go to the airport.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that's another influence. He steals a lot. He steals a lot of freaking cars. Yeah.
What's up with that? That's fascinating. Yeah. I guess carjacking is the American way. I can see that. Yeah, you're making your way in the world. You're figuring things out.
Stealing some cars.
Stealing some cars and getting on that open road.
Yeah. They'd also had some references to other references to the comics and the love interest, because you had Bernie Stewart is the love interest's name in the 1940s, and in the comics he had a love interest who was also named Bernie. I can't remember, different last Rosenberg, I think was her last name or something. I can't remember. And then and then her daughter is Sharon, which is obviously reference to Sharon Carter, who was the love interest in the comics, the major love interest.
Right.
Although, again, still, like, I don't know. I mean, you have such an opportunity here where you could tie him more closely into this president's story by having the government pick him up, by having the government bring him back in, by having Sharon as, a government agent who is assigned to him. It doesn't necessarily have to be SHIELD, but just like, CIA or something like that would have made it would have made so much more sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, without question. I mean, it's the president has this weird B story with like his good childhood friend who is the journalist. I didn't get it at all. The Captain Midnight Dakota Ring thing where they both loved this radio serial hero. It's like, what are we doing here?
It was stupid.
Yeah, it was just felt really extraneous. Yeah, I agree. It would have made much more sense that, if you're going to have a president character in a Captain America, they're probably going to be although by the end of it, Captain America becomes his Bucky, and the president becomes Captain America's Bucky. And the two of them are it sort of becomes a Air Force One on the ground kind of situation where it's it's a president who kicks ass. I mean, for a while, I kind of thought the president was going to be able to save himself entirely because he manages to get out of his own cage. He manages to run off. He probably could have just saved himself.
He probably could have, yeah. I mean, the only thing Captain America really does is he comes in with the music at the end.
Right, yeah. We didn't really need Captain America, as it turns out. So that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just it's the shield too. It looks so. Whenever I remember the first time he throws the shield in at the Nazi camp or whatever it is, it's just like it flies off screen and then it comes in from a completely different angle, and I'm like, yeah, that looks real. That looks.
Is it? I guess I'm trying now. I'm just kind of thinking like, did anybody do it right prior to the MCU? I guess it's the Batman films, the Tim Burton Batman films that really like bringing an established and already existing superhero from the comics into film in a credible way.
Oh yeah, I think there were definitely ones before Iron Man. I mean, you had Superman, obviously, the 1978 one.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Tim Burton Batman, definitely.
That's a big one. That's the one I think of.
The Raimi Spider-Man movies, the X-Men movies.
Oh, of course. Those came out before the MCU. Obviously, I guess maybe like earlier. What like prior to this movie, like it would be Superman. It would probably be the original Superman, the Tim Burton Batman.
Yeah, and the timing's about the same, but the Ninja Turtles movie also came out in 1990.
Oh yeah, among those, I actually think the Ninja Turtles movie is probably, technically speaking, the most impressive.
Technically speaking, yeah, I think I definitely agree with that.
I mean, Jim Henson killed it with those costumes.
I mean,
those puppet masks, it's the moving animatronic masks. I mean, the first movie, the sequels look terrible, but the first movie looks incredible. It holds that work holds up today, I think.
Yeah, we had we'd covered it on an earlier episode of the show. So this like maybe 2 years ago that we covered it, and it still holds up when I rewatched it then. And so it's that animatronic work was unbelievable. But also, you know what? Another movie that a lot of people probably don't realize, but it's another Marvel movie. And although it's not quite a good adaptation of the comic books, it is still a pretty decent movie for what they had to work with, was the 1978 made-for-TV Doctor Strange movie.
Oh, I've heard about that.
It was
yes.
There's some issues with it, right? Some of the effects look bad. They put the costume they put him in at the end of the movie doesn't look really good, but other than that, it's a pretty solid TV drama for the 1970s, especially.
That's cool. I was trying to check that out. I couldn't find it.
It's hard to find. It's really hard to find.
Yeah, I was curious about it. Having seen the new Doctor Strange movie, I was thinking about trying to watch that, but
yeah, you'd have to.
Hard to find.
You can. I mean, you'll have to track it down through some less than reputable sources, but it's out there. It's floating around out there. Because I saw it when we'd covered it on one of our early episodes, like way back in the beginning of the show, and it's not bad. Even what's her name? Jessica Walter was in it too.
Oh wow,
yeah.
Oh, good. It's good for her. That's great. She's always good in whatever she's in.
Yeah. But back to this movie. I mean, even like none of the performances are really anything that special. Matt Salinger, even, he's a Captain America fan, so I guess that's something, but he doesn't do anything to make me care about his character. Like, his character is just so flat.
Yeah, he doesn't emote.
No.
That's the problem. And in fact, it's kind of a problem throughout the film. It's like you don't see, there's not a lot of performances in this film.
No.
Captain America, yeah, he's like kind of among your drier Marvel heroes, but I think there's something, the MCU plays it very smart, where they emphasize that he is the stranger in a strange land. They emphasize the sort of the 1930s-ness of him as a guy, so that like when he is in modern day America, there's something stilted and weird about him, and it's like a purposeful choice. Whereas here, he doesn't really feel it's like being in modern day doesn't even really faze him that much.
Right.
And it doesn't change his character. I mean, like, you know, you think of a film like the original, like Austin Powers, and like that's like what you that's like what you expect thematically for a Captain America story to feel like, because this is a guy who was ripped out of his time period.
Right.
Almost all the people he knows and loves are dead or about to die. That's a crazy thing, and I didn't feel like it registered on this Captain America at all.
No, not at all.
I feel like it's just like, oh, okay, I got to fight those Nazis. I'm back. Where are the Nazis? It's like my dude. Like, things have changed a bit. We didn't even get a scene where he like he sees a Walkman at one point, and it's like says like made in Japan on it, and therefore he gets suspicious of the journalist. But like, he's never like in awe of it. He's never like, he doesn't like pick it up and like try to like figure it out. Like, it's like, huh? Like,
right, yeah.
You know, is this a personal recording to find? You know, wait, is this a what is this audio? How does this work? You know, like that's what I'm here for with Captain America. You know, there's none of that. There's no surprise. It's a hallmark of bad movies that are high concept bad movies, when the characters don't acknowledge how weird it is. What is happening. Yeah, it's like instant marker of like, oh, this is a bad movie. Like, this is the filmmakers didn't figure out like how to express the surprise that would come from normal people experiencing such a crazy shock.
Right.
And so yes, you get something like this where he's just a guy. He just feels like a guy.
Yeah, you're right. Nothing surprised. Like, I get it. And they did some of that in the MCU, but it made sense because he had been in the world, because there's been a period of time between each movie, right? So he gets woken up in the present at the end of the first movie, and then we have the Avengers, and some time had passed, but because he talks about he's in the gym, and they talk about leaving stuff at your apartment. So he'd had some time in the modern day, but even still, they did like the fish out of water thing. They did with the things where he doesn't understand people's references to pop culture and stuff like that.
Right.
Except when finally there's the Wizard of Oz reference, he gets excited because that's the only thing he recognizes.
Yeah.
And then in Winter Soldier, I thought they did a really good job, because again, there's another gap in time, but it shows that like anyone who is a young guy who wakes up in excuse me, in the future, you'd be curious about stuff. You'd want to learn about stuff. You wouldn't be like an old man all of a sudden.
Right.
Which is a crutch I think the comics have fallen on a lot, where they kind of portray him as a grandfather, even though he's still technically a young guy.
Right. Yeah, and it's different. It's a different thing. It's just like you'd have like a different set of morals, you'd have like a different set of reference point, but yeah, you wouldn't be an old man,
right?
You're just somebody from another you're a young man from another era where people treated each other differently and people thought about things differently. Your politics would be different. Like what I guess I needed this Captain America to like turn on MTV and just be like, what's going on? I mean, he's
just to see a TV and just be like, what is this? And just
exactly.
There's none of that. Like the closest thing we get is when Sharon shows him the tapes of like history, and he's just like, and he makes one comment in the middle of it that's just like the closest thing we ever get to something referencing the man out of time aspect. But there's no surprise. There's no coping with the fact that because the movie doesn't have enough time, right? So it's just like that's another problem. They're trying to cram you've got to cram the World War II origin story. You've got to cram the animosity with the Red Skull. You've got to cram in the time jump. You've got to cram in the man out of time story, and you've got to cram in the mission in the modern day where he has to save the president. You have to do all that, and you have to do it only in 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think that there was some stuff though that they could have, like, they should have cut the president and his journalist buddy.
Yeah,
just cut that out. We don't need any of it. Like, he's a president. Like, we get it. Like, we understand what a president is. Like, and that a president may need to be rescued from a supervillain. Like, I can get that. Like, I can get there without any backstory for who that guy is.
Yeah.
You know, just like I think I think there was definitely stuff to cut, and there was definitely stuff to add that would have made the film considerably better. It's weird. It's not slow paced, but it's just lumpy. It feels it's a lumpy film.
So he had there's apparently a director's cut.
Wow.
Yeah. Although it's not that impressive because Albert Pyun had done a tour. He'd gotten the work print, the rights to the work print version. He released his own director's cut. It was like available on his website. And all it is there's a little bit of character development on Cap at some point, but it's nothing that really special. And other than that, it's just a lot of recycled footage. So it's just it's a really bad. It was clearly just an attempt to cash grab, because I think he had released that when the first Avenger came out.
Oh, I see. Got it.
So yeah, it's just it from I haven't seen it, but from what I've read, it doesn't seem to be anything that impressive.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Well, they weren't hiding like they weren't hiding some of their best stuff or whatever.
No. What we saw was the best thing we had. And it's really saying something when this is the best thing you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, listen, as if you were a Marvel fan growing up and you loved, you wanted to see your characters on the big screen, you were oftentimes out of luck.
Yeah.
These things did not get adapted well until the first X-Men movie.
Well, until Blade,
Spider-Man and Blade. Yeah, Blade, Spider-Man, X-Men. It took a while to get there. But yeah, all growing up, for me it was like all about like X-Men the animated series. That was like oh yeah, this is because they really adhered to those comics. Like they really did their best, even though it was a show for kids. Like they really took a lot of the themes and stuff and brought them out. So it's like, oh cool, like I read the Legacy Virus and here it is. So yeah, this was definitely like a dark ages for Marvel. At this time, and and it shows.
Well, Marvel had a really weird thing where they were just so desperate. Stanley was so desperate to get movies made of these characters that they just sold the rights to basically anybody who offered.
Right.
and it did not work well for them. I mean, occasionally every now and then you'd have a situation where like you got the Hulk TV show, which was very culturally significant, or you got the Doctor Strange movie, which wasn't bad, but a lot of times you got stuff like, like this, or the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man, or the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. And
the Roger Corman Fantastic Four is, if I was to decide, if you were having seen both of the Roger Corman Fantastic Four and this Captain America, I strongly recommend the Roger Corman Fantastic Four.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is
it's much worse and therefore much more entertaining.
You know what? In a weird way though, it is worse, but I feel like have you ever seen the documentary about that movie?
Oh yeah, definitely. There was a love for it.
You get a sense that they really cared about what they were doing. I don't get the sense that anybody except maybe Matt Salinger cared about what they were doing here.
Yeah, I get that. There's definitely like a by the numbers-y sort of vibe to this.
Yeah.
With a lot of like weird choices and stuff, that inexplicable things. yeah, the Fantastic Four movie is like, it's bursting with energy. It's all misguided, but it's definitely like bursting with energy and enthusiasm, which is what makes it such an enduring classic in the bad films canon. I don't think this is as memorable,
No.
but it definitely has its moments. The hitting of the missile in midair to swerve it away from the White House, that was for me like the high watermark of the film. That's where I felt like it really like wow, we are doing something here.
You know what kind of reminds me of, and this is probably just because it's fresh in my mind, but have you seen Morbius yet?
Not yet, no.
So it's very similar. It reminds me a lot of Morbius in that it's bad, but it's not spectacularly bad. Like,
right.
It's just a very mediocre kind of bad. And it's there, it's boring, and it's not interesting. Morbius is very much like that.
That's funny, but people are memeing out over Morbius.
I know, that's why I was so disappointed that it was not so spectacularly bad, because it's just bland.
Yeah, this is bad. I think it's worse than bland, but it's not as bad to be like The Room or something like that.
Right, exactly. It's not like Sharknado or anything like that. You're not going to have drinking parties watching this movie.
But I wasn't bored either. There was enough bad red meat in here that I could laugh with my partner while we were watching it. I wasn't thoroughly unentertained. I just think that it doesn't reach the heights of the wild heights of a Roger Corman Fantastic Four.
And maybe that's because I've seen this before, so I know what to expect. So maybe that's why it didn't have that effect on me this time. But for me, it was just very boring.
Yeah,
at least on this viewing.
I certainly would not watch this movie multiple times. That is wild.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Geoffrey, thanks so much for coming on to talk about this movie. Why don't you tell people where they can find your stuff again?
Absolutely. I'm on Twitter at Geoffrey Golden. That's GEOFFREY, like the giraffe, GOLDEN, like the color. My newsletter role-playing game is Adventure Stack, and you can find it at adventurestack.com. I also co-host a podcast where we make up new bad movies. So we create, with the help of a role-playing game system, my two friends and I, we create new straight to VHS movies, and that show is called Worst Movies Ever Played. And you can find that on the Starburns audio network, wherever you get your podcasts. So it's Worst Movies Ever Played.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Even though you made me watch a really bad movie, but thanks anyway. That does. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to come. Maybe we'll have you come on again and talk about Fantastic Four next time.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'd love to. That'd be blast.
Okay. All right. Well, that does it for this episode of Superhero Cinephiles. SuperheroCinephiles.com is the website. Super Cinema Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Please make sure to like and review us. And if you join our Patreon, you get these web episodes a week in advance. Plus, you get the special book club episodes where we're doing reviews of comic books. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. If you enjoyed the Superhero Cinephiles, then you'll also love my companion podcast, the Superhero Cinephiles Book Club. All my Patreon subscribers get access to this exclusive podcast where I review superhero comics and graphic novels. Not sure what comics you want to read next or what you should dive into? I've got you covered on that. I'll be doing reviews, recommendations, and also talking to you about useful entry points if you're interested in reading some comics but don't know where you should start. Plus, you'll get access to all episodes of the main show a week before everyone else. On all of this for as little as just $1 a month. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/supercinemapod, and you can sign up at any subscription amount to get started. Thanks so much for your support, and please don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.